Hey everybody, this is Alzorath, and welcome to another Diablo 2 build video. This one probably looks really stupid from the outside, but for now you're actually probably seeing Baal being defeated by it in the background. And yes, this is a challenge build. I was challenged to make a Necromancer Zealot because we made a sorceress that could be a Zealot, a Tesladin on a sorceress. So it was like, okay, here's a challenge. Make a paladin that's a zealot and does not do direct damage skills. And no, you cannot use summons except for one golem. So yeah, that was the challenge. And I was like, okay, if I can beat Baal, it's going to be making a video. And guess what? I beat Baal, as you could probably see in the background. It only took about 50 seconds, so chances are we are honestly done with it by now. Or thereabouts. So yeah, I actually went and counted how long it took, because it was a lot faster than I expected it to be with that low of damage. It's 600 and something whenever our enchant is triggered, which frankly it was then, so ooh, 40 extra damage. And yes, I am using this enchant. I am not using the castable enchant, mainly because I'm lazy about it and I needed the attack speed anyway, so that's going on there. But anyway, since I have so many restrictions, this has to be Zeal focused. The killing has to be based around Zeal. I did do Corpse Explosion on this just for a little bit of crowd control, although I didn't use it. I only used it once while going down to Baal. So I don't think it's exactly that necessary, but it does come in handy because Corpse Explosion just speeds everything up. But let's go ahead and look at our stats first. This is going to be one of those situations where I went for max block, as you can tell from the dexterity. We got enough strength for all of our equipment. You may be like, it's 190. How's that enough for your equipment? It's because the shield adds a bunch of strength. Otherwise, we'd have just like right on spot for strength. And shield is our heaviest item. We've got dexterity close enough to max block. I've got it at 74%. We're at level 92. I'm not going to bother worrying about that extra 1% for a little bit of dexterity. And then we have the rest into vitality. Nothing into energy because we really don't need it. And next up, we actually have the skills. The skills are next. And we're right here on the curse tree. I'll get to why this is 10 points and confused in just a minute, but we're going to start with the summoning tree because it's the least interesting. We're going to start with Clay Golem. He's maxed out, so is Golem Mastery. Went ahead and tried to get him at least over 10,000 hit points. This is not the one that I beat Baal with. I was experimenting with some other things that had slightly lower Clay Golem. So this would work out a little bit better. You'd get a little bit more slow from it. It is worth noting that the slow from Clay Golem, I don't know if it's in 1.14, but in previous versions, the slow on Clay Golem actually applied whenever enemies hit the Clay Golem, and I'm pretty sure that's how it still works as well, because Lister's minions. Yeah, and then just Golem Master to get more life, and 1 point into Summon Resist for the value point for extra resists for Mr. Fatty here, so he can actually survive. Yeah, he needs to survive. He's a little expensive to cast, but we don't have to recast him very often. Yeah, it's a decent chunk of our mana there. Next up is the Poison and Bone Tree. You probably saw this one coming, and this one is actually one that I'm going to be using for a little bit of an explanation. And the reason this is at 10 is just how many points I had left over for it after I got confused up to a reasonable point. But yeah, we got 1 point into Bone Spear and Teeth because we had to get down the tree to get to Bone Prison, and Corpse Explosion was just kind of like a pocket thing I added at the end. I don't use it as primary killing on this. Bone Armor is level 1. Reason being, each point into it only adds 10, whereas each point into these adds 15. So I decided max out Prison and Wall because I can actually use them for other functions, especially Prison. It's good for like trapping certain annoying enemies, and that's why I have it on my hotkeys down there. It's pretty solid in that regard. Not necessary, but useful. And yeah, Bone Wall is just Bone Wall. We can spam those if we want to, but Bone Armor, we just wanted to get as much point value as possible, just to have a little bit of durability, and 600 plus is good enough. You can get it higher. You could get it higher if you had plus skills, but we had to use our charms for attack rating, so we don't have plus skills on there. And last but not least, we have our curses. No, we don't need lower resist. It does nothing for us. You may notice Mercenary has Conviction. Yeah. Mercenary's Conviction is for our attack purposes. It reduces enemy defense so we can hit them. It's not doing anything for elements, although we do actually have an okay amount of elemental damage to kind of go with it. Decrepify is there to slow enemies down and reduce their physical resistance. I actually have that on here instead of Amp. I do Decrepify and then Corpse Explode, simply because I don't feel like running through quite so many skills. I have enough on here already that to focus on, to like remember the order of, that I don't really want to add another one to it, but you could use Amplify instead. Main reason this is, it's fairly decent. 5.8 seconds is long enough. I could dump more in there to get it longer. If you needed more AoE, Amplify damage works fine, but as our corpse explosion is, it's only 5.6 yards for that, and it's about well, it's actually way less for the Decrepify, but it's close enough. Ideally, we'd get this up to about 10 yards eventually. But the first thing I wanted to get to 10 yards was Confuse. Now, since I was making a Zealot, that means I cannot take advantage of the Poison Dagger, because the only way for a Necromancer to get Zeal is through a Phase Blade. Well, you can use any sword, but we used a Phase Blade for durability purposes, and that's the one I had laying around. So we had to have something to deal with crowds that were kind of storming us, and Confuse is a great tool, and it's also your main tool against things like Gloams. Because Gloams will wreck your face with this character, even if you have max lightning resist, because you just, yeah, you can't have enough life to really kind of just tank through that. So if you confuse them, they'll face off against each other, and you can kind of pick them off small groups. Thankfully, on this last trip down, I didn't encounter any Gloams, but I have died against Gloams on this one, so it is worth keeping an eye out for them and just kind of like, nah. Now, is this going to speed run through the bosses? God, no. But it did do Baal fairly quick. Now, that is the skills. The Confuse is just your crowd control. Basically, it'll turn a group of them against each other. The duration is okay. The radius of 10 yards gets you enough area that you can get a clump of enemies, or at least like a side of enemies to kind of help you out. And you can still attack them for the most part, so Confuse is good. Attract is a maybe. If you want to, you can. It's really good for like single pain in the butt enemies, or if you're really good at like clipping the edge of your screen with it, that can be pretty solid. I decided to just go straight for Confuse, especially since the alternate I was considering with this was just kind of messing around with like a stupid Tesla Necro or something like that. That didn't work out. It's funny, but it doesn't work out. I was going to go full meme lord with it and just go for that, because we have 2 Tesla builds already. But anyway, that brings us to, last but not least, equipment. First things first, yes, I had to use charms for some resistances, but mostly for attack rating here. Now, if I were to do this for optimal play, I would actually be using Steel Grand Charms of Balance, because that's going to give you faster hit recovery, which the Necromancer has very terrible hit recovery, and your block rate is one of the slowest in the game as well. That's what makes Zealot version of this exceptionally hard. We've got Lava Gout for casting Enchant. As I said before, I'm too lazy to cast it as a pre-buff. You could also go for pre-buff with your life and mana. I chose not to do that, just go with this and see if it handles it on its own, because a little bit of extra life will help, but if you can do it without it, you can do it without it. And we can do it without it. But this we got mainly for the 20% increased attack speed. We have to hit 70% increased attack speed for max Zeal speed on the Necromancer. And we do hit that. We actually go a bit beyond it. But we needed that extra increased attack speed. We could use Blood Fist and get 10% increased attack speed and 10% faster hit recovery. But then we wouldn't have the enchant on here. So that's the main reason I went with that. And we don't need the half freeze duration, because guess what? We've got Ravenfrost. I went for the highest dexterity one I had, and, well, highest dexterity, and then attack rating was second on that. The reason for the higher dexterity is because I wanted to get max block on this. So that was the main focus there. Cold Absorb is nice. Cannot be frozen is a great thing as well. A little bit of cold damage actually doesn't hurt whenever you're doing that little of damage. So that does add to our speed, sadly. Next up, we have Nosferatu's Coil with the Vampire Fang Belt. This gives a little bit of life leech. It slows the target, which we do kind of rely on slow against certain groups of enemies with Decrepify, the Clay Golem, and this. We could go for other sources of slow as well, but this also gives us strength, which saves us on some of the cost of stats to get to this lovely. Otherwise, we'd have to be a little bit higher. But anyway, but yeah, it's just a fairly solid belt. There are other options you could use. You could do String of Ears. You wouldn't have the increased attack speed on this, which would kind of hurt you a little bit. But I think, let's see, 20, 40, 50, and then 75. We would need 5 more increased attack speed somewhere. So yeah, we're just right in threading that needle with that one. Next up, we just have our Dual Leech Ring that we've passed around to pretty much every melee, or well, actually every physical damage character we've used. seriously, gambling for one of these is great. You can trade for certain illegitimate ones online. You can also make blood ones. They're going to be a higher level requirement. They're a little bit easier to come by with that. And that's about it with those. But yeah, you can gamble this. This took me quite a while to gamble, but I burned through several trips with Edge and Geeds on. Next up, we have Gore Rider. You could use Goblin Toe for a little bit of a cheaper option. I chose this one because it puts us at a nice even 50%. It also adds that chance of open wounds, which is kind of nice because that'll keep the enemy from healing. It wears them down just a little bit, and it's just good in general. It's not a bad one, so we can kind of go with that. Then we have Chains of Honor as our armor. Now, might be like, why not go for Enigma or Shaft Stop or something like that? Chains of Honor, mainly because it gives us resists. We were struggling on resists, and I can show off. See, our resists are terrible without that, so we definitely need the Chains of Honor resists. We have damage reduction by 8% on it, which is okay. Plus 2 all skills is nice. 8% life leech, and a little bit of extra strength as well. I'm using the Wire Fleece simply because it was the first one I came across in my stash, so that's the one that we have going on with that. It's a little bit lower defense than like a Mage Plate or something like that, and it gives us red pants, but it's fine. I think this, oddly enough, looks better with the Yume's face. Wow, I'm going to mispronounce that about 97 times. But that's just good armor to have. Chains of Honor, and it's also a bit cheaper than some other options. The bear is the bad part of it. But next up, we have Storm Shield. This one you probably should have seen coming because we do need damage reduction. It doesn't have great block. I chose in it again for resists, just to get those capped out, get them up there really high. There are other options for it. You can get yourself better block. You can get yourself faster hit. Well, I forget whether you can get faster hit recovery on a shield. I think you can. But yeah, you can get yourself a few things on the shield through jewels, through runes, through various things. I just went with because it was straightforward, and that just happens to be a really good Storm Shield addition just for like across multiple characters. So definitely consider that. And we also get extra defense based on level. We get faster block rate on this. It's all around just a good shield, especially with some resist thrown in there. We saw the High Lord's Wrath earlier. It is plus 1 all skills, 20% increased attack speed. Those are our two main stats on it. Lightning resist is a plus. Deadly Strike is okay. We're not doing a lot of physical damage, so it's not going to do a whole lot. And oddly enough, the lightning damage actually does something for us again. And then we have Guillaume's Face, which is the Winged Helm. It is a 35% chance of crushing blow. That's the only thing we really care about on there. It does give us some strength, but it being pretty much one of our highest strength requirement items besides the shield, it's going to be late on that list. So usually whenever we get up to that amount, it's stacking up. But sadly, we're only 5 strength short of wearing the Storm Shield if we just have the stats for this equipment. So it's not a big investment to move up to the Storm Shield after having all this on. So, yay. Faster hit recovery, definitely a necessity. If we can get more, get more if you're playing this build. And definitely recommend the Steel Grand Charms of Balance, or the, where are they? I think it's Sharp. There's another one for that. But yeah, just attack rating, attack rating, attack rating, attack rating. You don't worry about damage on this. So Steel is going to trump out Sharp, although Sharp is not terrible. So you definitely want to be going for that attack rating on these, and faster hit recovery. And last but not least, Passion, because we're making a Necromancer Zealot. This is the only source of Zeal we can realistically use in this build. We could also go a Berserk Necro if we really wanted to. We're not doing enough physical damage to really mess with that. So 25% increased attack speed gets us up to that 75%. The breakpoint is at 70%. You have a little bit of enhanced damage, but it has a 79% bonus to attack rating, so yay. Without enchant, we have a 56% chance to hit Baal. With enchant, I think we're up to a 60-something% chance, which is, oddly enough, not bad. And we also have a little bit of lightning damage, and we also have blind target. The only downside of this one really is that hit causes monster to flee 25%. We attack fast enough that we trigger it a lot, as we'll see whenever we go to fight things. But on the alt, you could do battle orders, you could do a bunch of other things. You have a lot of options for the alt, whether you want to pre-buff with life boost and stuff like that, or whether you want to pre-buff with enchant. It's up to you. I'm just going in dry. So we're going into Frigid Highlands. I'm going to go ahead, just double check all my stuff. We're going to get Confuse up right now. mainly because I don't know what kind of mods this guy's going to have. There are certain mods these guys could have that could be a royal pain in the butt, but Confuse causes them to kind of fight each other, and as you can see, our mercenary is actually doing some work. And yes, our mercenary has an infinity, but we are also able to, oddly enough, kill things. So you can see we cast out the Confuse a little bit more often than we cast out other things, just because we don't want to deal with the ranged guys a lot, and we don't want to deal with things kind of like getting after us. And yeah, we're oddly enough doing fairly well, and our mercenary is not doing all the killing for us. We are doing some of the work ourselves, just because that crushing blow really does add up after a while. We can come over to the Slinger, and you can actually see just how much damage we do. It's just because we are brutal like that, and we can handle almost any group of enemies just by casting Confuse out appropriately. And yes, you can attack confused enemies. Your negative effect auras affect them. And yeah, it's a pretty solid skill if you're going to be playing a weird build, which this one kind of falls into the category of. You can see we just kind of smoked all those guys pretty quickly. So yeah, it's not bad. Your strategy with this one for most enemy packs is going to be just drop Confuse and run in and Zeal them as best as possible. If you're going up against a boss mob, you switch over to Decrepify and slow them down and beat them up that way, knocking out their physical resistance. And you can also, if there's certain troublesome enemies, you can Bone Prison them and slow them down so you can kind of deal with one pack and then deal with the second pack. Obviously, that doesn't work with ghosts, but Corpse Explosion is just there in case we get swarmed and we need it. It's really good against ghosts with Decrepify because you break their physical resistance, and then they just take a whole ton of fire damage and a little bit of physical damage, and they're gone. And the Golem is just a tanky boy at 13,000 life. We don't even have that many plus skills. This is not even an expensive build to make with what we've got. The expensive thing is the dual leech ring, and it's not even necessary. Just get a mana leech ring because you're going to get life leech from other places. Like you get 8% from this armor. So yeah, and the bear is a little bit expensive and the ring is expensive. Everything else, honestly, even the storm shield you can get for free from some people. So it's pretty common stuff. Now, as far as what the mercenary has equipped, currently we have our stuff for, I forget which character we had this equipped on before, but basically you've got Fortitude Archon Plate, Vampire Gaze Helm with a bear in it. You could put anything you want in here. I just have the bear to keep him alive a little bit easier. And then we have Infinity. The Infinity is semi-important. He's a Holy Freeze mercenary, but the Infinity gives the Conviction aura, which lets you have an easier time hitting. So what we see here for our chance to hit, we actually have a whole lot higher because their defense is reduced so drastically. So yeah, it works out that we end up having a fairly reliable chance to hit with this Zealot. But that is pretty much the rundown of this character. I would say probably 1 to 3 player count is where you kind of want to sit with it if you're going to be playing with it. I do not recommend it to new players because it's going to require some juggling around with the I just wanted to call them enchantments, with the curses, just to know which one to use when. Like against ghosts, you could use Confuse, but you'd rather use Decrepify. You want to know how to control your Golem if you need to summon him into the middle of a pack to lure them in and then go and attack them so they're not focusing on you and so they're all slowed. You need to know when to do that and when to just cast Confuse at the end of your screen depending on where you're at. So it's kind of a complicated build to do, but it's not as bad as it sounded. So if you guys have a challenge that you'd like to see me try and build, if I can beat Baal with it, I will make a video of it if I go through and try and build it. So mention them down below and I'll give it a try. I can't promise anything. I know some people were wanting me to do some multi-character builds. That's going to be something that I would have to possibly wait until after Diablo 2 Resurrected comes out. I could discuss them, but I don't have the setup to really do a multi-character custom build unless I like recruit some people to do videos with me. So anyway, that's what we do with this guy. He's not as bad as I thought he was going to be, and he can actually kill things in players 1 hell. So wow, I was surprised. But keep gaming, have fun, peace out. This has been Alzorath, and I will see you guys next time. Bye.